Chances are, if you're a regular listener of the show, you've probably heard me talk about the Wellness Company. And if you are, and you've heard me talk about the Wellness Company, you've probably heard me talk about their medical kits, like the medical emergency kit, the travel kit, and the first aid kit, among others. But you probably haven't heard me talk about all the other amazing stuff that the Wellness Company has. Supplements like Spike Support, Healthy Heart, Restful Sleep, Z-Stack, which is an immune system strengthening vitamin blend, Elevated Energy, which helps you improve your energy and focus, Blood Sugar Balance, which is natural maintenance for healthy blood sugar levels, Natural Immunity, which basically strengthens your immune system with antioxidants and various botanicals, and they even have Kids Spike Support. That's right, a Spike Support supplement designed specifically for kids, among many, many others. Check out the Wellness Company today, twc.health/freemind. Make sure you're in control of yours and your family's health future, whether it's with a kit like the medical emergency kit or any number of their amazing supplements. You can save big money if you use my link, twc.health/freemind. Go there today. Justin Prince, welcome to the show, man.
Brother, thanks for having me. Honored to be on with you.
Absolutely. Well, it's an honor to have you, and it's an honor to meet you. I was just talking to you before we hit record about how I survey my audience, and I'm like, hey, who do you guys want to hear from? And that really puts you into my orbit. I was unfamiliar with your content. Awesome. or you. And, you know, if my listeners are suggesting a name, I'm going to check them out. So I did my research. I, checked out your content and everything. And I was like, man, I'd love to have this guy on because, as I was telling you, I think it's important to showcase good role models for young people and to talk about people who embody the sort of ethic of being a strong individual and relying on yourself in this world where everybody plays a victim, it seems, at least in a part of culture. But anyway, I am going to read a couple things from your website, and then I want to go in depth on those, if that's cool with you. All right. So you have built 5 multi-million-dollar businesses. You've generated $2 billion plus in revenue, and you've shared stages with some amazing names, John Maxwell, Ed Mylett. You were born in a broken home. We share that in common, so I definitely want to talk about that. No college education. Used to work construction and flip pizzas. Your first business left you below zero financially, and your first sliver of success came while raising your kids in a one-room loft above your in-laws' garage. Mm-hmm. Bro, there's so many parallels between us. It's actually kind of scary. So I'm really excited to talk about this. My story has inspired hundreds of thousands of people like you to be the one. And I know that that's the namesake of your book, which for people viewing is in the background there. So let's dig into it, man. Tell me about coming up in a broken home and let's talk about the timeline and what led you to be what I would call a success today in every sense of the word.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, bro. So my folks, my dad, when my mom married my dad had 2 kids. He had my older sister, older brother. And so I was my mom's oldest child. They had 4 kids together. And so when I was 12, they got divorced. And so my older sister was already in California with her biological mom. My brother moved in with my dad. So I was the oldest at home with my mom. And, those are tricky, those are tricky years as you're kind of bouncing around. So we moved 13 times in the 7 years through the teenage years. I did a lot of sports. And so kind of the rule that my dad had with me is he goes, if you're in sports, that counts as your job. But as soon as sports ends, you have to go get a job. And so I remember one time we ended the season on a Thursday night. I was like crying and I was so sad. I just couldn't even sleep that night. I was so distraught that we lost. And then this is like, by the way, I was like 16. Okay. And Friday after school, I thought he would give me at least the weekend to like mourn the loss of my season, Anyway, Friday afternoon, as soon as school was done, I was out flipping pizzas for my buddy's dad's pizza company. So it just taught me how to work and get over it pretty quick. But had really no professional background. I was making pizzas. Did construction work for my dad's construction company. And then I worked at a mall kiosk selling animated Bible videos. I was the guy at the mall you try to avoid eye contact with. They try and talk you into stopping so they could sell you something. And so did that for a number of years. And then I started my first business when I was 25. My wife and I had my little baby boy. He was probably 18 or so months old. He'll be 20 here, just to give you an idea. He'll be 20 here in about 10 days. And so life goes fast, as you know.
Yeah,
and so, people have asked me since, they're like, why did you start your business? And I used to give these I was kind of insecure about, whether I was going to succeed or not. So I try to give these really profound answers, like I wanted to create a financial asset and blah, blah, all this kind of stuff. No, dude. The reason I started that business is I wanted my little boy to be proud of me, and I wanted my wife to be proud of me. It was the reason I did it. I just had dreams and goals. And so, first business fails. We're below zero financially. We're now back on credit cards, back on taxes. We moved into the loft of my wife's parents' garage. My two little kids, we had our little girl at this point. My two little kids are sleeping in the closet. My wife and I are in this little loft. I'm working 2 part-time jobs now. So I had one job I would do during the weekdays, one I would do in the weekends. And then I got enough courage to start another business. So I'm like, any nooks and crannies you had, you're trying to get that business off the ground. I mean, just grinding, dude. And, there'd be many nights I'd come home. My little kids are, they're asleep in the closet, and it's 1 a.m. and I'd be laying there with my wife, and I'm like, pitch black. I'm like, are you awake? She's like, yeah. She's like, are you awake? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, am I crazy? Like, am I chasing a fake dream? Is this ever going to actually happen for us? And eventually I kind of figured that business out. I ultimately sold that business when I was 29. I did private equity consulting for the next 2 years. And then my last business project for the next 11 years, this recently ended, but last 11 years I was with a company. So I came into a company that was 25 years old, but it was 8 years in a row of double-digit decline in revenue. So in other words, the revenue is going the wrong direction, really, to a point where it's about to go out of business. And so we came in as part of a consulting team to help them transform that company. And in that process, we created a brand new company, brand new business model, brand new everything, really, compensation structure, all of it. And we launched that business. And I was a minority equity partner, but my real role was in the field. I was like, I want to go prove this is going to work. I thought we had $1 billion idea. And I went out in the field, started building teams and sales teams and just, leadership teams all over the world. And, ultimately that was a $2.5 billion idea. It was it was kind of a big idea, paid out over $1 billion in commissions. And it was just a great ride. And, all of that stuff led to just more and more and more, people are like, tell me more about your story. So more and more speaking and more coaching. And so the book for me, the book was really 2 things. The one, so it's Be the One. The one is success is an identity process, and it's reminding yourself of who you really are. And when you learn that you're the one. So if you think about it this way, Dave, if you were to take your folks, right, and you were to take your grandparents and your great-grandparents and your great-great-grandparents, if you were to go up 12 generations was 4,094 people. So 4,094 people from all over the world came together to create you. You are the one for these, for these people. And you're the one that these folks live for and bled for and cried for and died for and gave everything they had for us for you to have this moment. And so you start realizing, like, man, I'm the one. So the second part is not become the one, you are the one. The second part is to be. Be, as you know, such a present term. It's like, be the best version of yourself today. Be the one today. And you start stepping into who you really are. So the book, I hope it inspires and motivates, but really what I hope it does is it gives people practical, tactical frameworks and formulas and strategies to literally be the one today that future generations look up in their family lineage and they say, it was him or it was her. She's the one that changed it for our family forever. So, the addiction ended with him, or the abuse stopped with her, or the financial principles and the business concepts. It was my great-great-great-grandpa, and they're telling your story. You are the one for that family. And so that's where that book came from. And just that's been a really cool thing. Is I got a message just a couple of minutes ago. A woman said to me, she goes, man, your book's just like changed my life. She goes, I have my 13-year-old son read it with me. And that's the power of a book, right? Is you get to impact the mom here in this example, and then obviously that next generation with her kids.
Yeah, man, so many things in that I'm just sitting here drawing parallels to my own life. So I kid you not, man. I kid you not. I lived in the loft above my in-laws' garage with
what age is for you?
So this was my early 20s. I dropped out of a grad program in California, with my head hung low, went back to the East Coast, had no money, nothing. I had 2 years into a PhD program that I dropped out of. Lived in my then fiance at the time, now wife and mother of my children, but lived in the loft above their garage, dude. Um, it and I had listening to that moment you had laying there with your wife, like, am I crazy? I've had so
Yeah.
many of those
Yeah,
moments.
of
So,
course.
built and sold a company, and sold it when I was 29. Like literally so many parallels in our stories. It's kind of weird actually. And was doing the same thing, building that business as I was working a job. Like
Yep.
my corporate gig was in recruiting for technical roles for defense and pharma, and I grew with a company in that for a decade. But I built this chain of restaurants on the side, quote unquote, which was really not on the side. It was another full time, investment of time
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
efforts, and scaled that company to 100 employees and sold it. And just looking at the going from that moment of thinking, my God, I've messed everything up. I'm a dropout. I'm living at my in-laws. This is incredibly embarrassing as a man, as someone who's um, supposed to be getting things done right,
Of course.
in terms of the marriage
Providing and so on.
and
Yeah, of
providing.
course.
Yeah, 100%. And I think so many men go through that, and the just the pressure, I think, that's on men, especially today in the current climate of the demonization of quote toxic masculinity. And if you're a type A dude, if you're a competitive dude, if you're a guy who, and I want to dive into this with you
Yeah.
actually, because you mentioned, your dad, I think, owned a business, owned a company, construction.
Yep.
Sounds like he was a pretty strict fella, and had some hard and fast rules in place, which, my kids, my oldest is in gymnastics, and she knows if she ever quits that, she's got to do something else. Like
Yeah, of course.
it's a non-negotiable, right? We want them to be well-rounded humans and to know what it is to work. But hearing that, and then the fact that you did sales, and you did not just sales, but you did the most scary type of sales, I think, to most people. And just I've never done that type of sales. I've done a ton of cold calling and door knocking type stuff and everything, but being that dude in the mall who's trying to sell people animated Bible videos of all things. Dude, I tell young people all the time, man, if you think you want to be an entrepreneur, get some sales experience and do the most
Mhm.
uncomfortable freaking thing and put yourself out there, and you'll learn a lot about yourself. But I was curious, did you always have sort of the drive to want to do your own thing, to be an entrepreneur, or is that something that you think your pops ingrained in you, being a business owner himself, or kind of where did that come from?
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a great question. So I'm going to answer it this way. It was both. So check this out. I remember coming up for like a drink, 11:45 at night. I get out of bed, I go up to the kitchen to get a drink. And I remember seeing my dad there on the kitchen table. He's got his yellow legal pad and his pen, and he's just in his calculator, and he's just like sketching some stuff out for his subdivisions and what he's trying to do. And I don't know if I even fully got it necessarily, other than I remember thinking, here, the dude's still working. I knew that. But then I remember, like, particularly like my ninth grade year and sophomore year and stuff, when you'd play sophomore basketball, for example. Sophomore basketball games like at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So it's not like, varsity games like at 7 at night. So everyone's kind of done working and they go to the game. But he'd always be at my games. And I remember thinking to myself, he had created an environment where he had the autonomy to be at my games when he wanted to be. Meaning, when I say when he wanted to be, he wanted to always be at those. But I'm just saying he had created the autonomy to be where he wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
The second part, though, was the way he had created that is he didn't work as a normal 9 to 5. He was kind of always grinding on all of his projects and feeling that ups and downs of the stress that creates. So I remember thinking I wanted to row my own boat. Now, with that said, let me say this. I remember when I first got into sales, I hadn't sold. There's this one stretch that I went where I hadn't sold anything for like a number of weeks and number of shifts. So the way that these shifts work is the way this company set it up is you would rent the booth, the little kiosk, you would rent it. And so it was like $50 a time or something like that. So it was all commission. So if you sold nothing, not only did you not make any dollars, you were like $50 in the hole, right?
You're in
money. Debt 50,
yeah.
Right. And so I went like 8 or 9 shifts in a row. So I'm like $450 in debt, which at the time was like more than my freaking bills. I was just stressing out, I'm literally living at my mom's basement. I was just kind of getting going. And I remember I came home, I threw my sales bag down like this, like on the floor. My mom's like, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, "I suck at sales, Mom. I suck at sales. I don't want to do this anymore." She goes, "I'm sure no, you're good." I go, "No, Mom, I suck." She goes, "I'm sure it's not that bad." I'm like, "It's that bad, Mom." And I'm just like totally exaggerating, And I did that. And I said to her, I just want to get a job just where I know how much they're going to pay me. And I get paid the $8 an hour or whatever it was at the time, $8, $9, $10 an hour. And at least I know what if I work 5 hours, I made $50 versus over here, I lost $50. So I thought, how interesting is that I grew up with this thing of like, I want to row my own boat. I want to go out there and do it. But then you get into the game and it's harder than you think. Yeah. And you're like, you know what? You want to wilt and go back in the corner. And I think back to that experience. If I would have given up right there, fortunately, I didn't. I kind of persevered and learned the skill of selling and working that interpersonal work with people. But man, what if I would have just rolled over and quit right there and just gone and got, kind of an hourly type job? And I want to point something out. It's not that there's anything wrong with the hourly thing. In other words, if that's your thing, more power to you. That's not the issue. The issue is that wouldn't have worked for the spirit and the goals that I had. It just wouldn't have worked. I would have felt like I was like, man, it's like just like you're burying your talents. It's just like you're just not giving life all you got. And so I had to overcome that. So on one hand, I felt like I had that example from my dad. On the other hand, man, I almost threw that all away just because it was harder than I thought. So it's a little bit of a combination of both those things as I was thinking through where did you get that mentality?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I've had that same sort of sentiment early in my career. And I always, when I was in those types of roles where it was like punch a clock, get paid for your time, that's it. It didn't sit well with me ever because I always, like, from the beginning, man, it was always just this sense of, I want to know that I can work harder and make more. Like, a simple equation, right? But I think there's certain types of people that do way better in that type of scenario. And again, like you said, there's nothing wrong if you're not that type of person, but if you find yourself, and I think we deal a lot, Justin, with this sort of glamorization of entrepreneurship and business ownership today on social media. I hear from a lot of young people who are like, "Oh, tell me about you built a company and sold it or whatever. I want to do that too and live the hustle life or whatever." And I'm like, "Bro, you want me to be honest? It was awful. I'm a big bearded man. I cried many times. Many times I've cried in building my company and it getting it off the ground. It's fun and sexy and everything, but then the grind of operations and scaling and growing and building teams of people and leading people and negotiating leases and just all the things that come with it, man. I'm like, all that glamour you see, that is not what it is. You need to be ready to suffer and bleed, but you'll know if it's for you, if through all of that, you still know that there's nothing else you'd rather be doing because you're that type of person, right? And not like a very small percentage of people, I think, are truly the type of person who can do that. And it's not, again, it's not the fault of anyone if they're not that type of person, but don't fall into the trap of thinking, and I'm not trying to talk people out of having a business. I just like being realistic with people. It's not sexy private jets and champagne and all this stuff that you see. I mean, yeah, that can happen way down the road. Andy Frisella, who has this company on my hat, First Form. I've been with, affiliated with that company for 6 years. He's become a friend, a mentor. And I talk to him almost daily. Dude, he worked for a decade without making any money, and people see what he has now, and they think that they're going to go do that. It's like, bro, I'm telling you, unless you really feel this deep pull towards that type of life, you're going to get chewed up and spat out. And I'm curious from your perspective, like what made you keep going in that moment where you were teetering on, hey, I could just get a freaking job, get paid whatever, $8 an hour. I'm not cut out for this. Like, what was it?
Yeah, I mean, that $8 an hour one is just one of those many times you're like, what the freak am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
I've told people over the years, I'm like, I was just too stupid to quit. I mean, I don't know, dude. I just kept going left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. I just kind of kept moving forward. Sometimes, direction is more important than destination. You may not be 100%. Where you want to be yet, but man, are you heading the right direction? Maybe you've got 30 pounds to lose, but you've already lost 3, and you're just doing the steps. You know what I'm saying? You're moving in the right direction. You're moving towards your goal, moving towards your dream. Like, direction's more important than destination. And so I just kind of kept moving towards it. That was one thing. The other thing for me is I kind of got to a place. I feel like I'm pretty competitive. And I got to a place where I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I can't justify that all of these other people can do something I can't do, that all these other people can figure out something I can't figure out. Like,
yeah,
by the way, not because I think I'm so smart, but I'm like, he's tall, she's short. She's tall, he's short. This one's heavy, that one's skinny. This one's gregarious and outgoing. This one's really quiet and shy. And they've all figured this thing out. I was like, man, I got to figure this thing out. It's just like, I just couldn't justify that everyone else from all these different backgrounds and all these different perspectives and all these different challenges could figure out something I couldn't eventually figure out. And I think that kind of logic / competitiveness,
yeah,
kind of kept me going. So that, and then I do think I had just enough, and I mean just enough wins, just enough where you're tasting just enough of the sweetness of it. You're like, okay. And I'm talking small stuff, right? At this point, just small wins. Like, okay. Because if I just would have been getting smashed the entire time, then maybe I would have just said, forget this. But I just having just enough wins to keep going.
Can you see me? I think my camera cut out.
We lost your camera.
All right. I'm going to switch to my other camera. All right. There we go. I had to switch to from my expensive, nice camera that failed me to my laptop. Sorry about that.
No worries at all.
But yeah, getting those small wins along the way, and
success is the breakfast of champions, or results are the breakfast of champions. You start getting just a little, that one sell, that one yes, that one key employee, that one, that one appointment that you've been working hard to get, like just a little bit of success kind of keeps you saying, let's keep going, let's keep moving this thing forward.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so funny that you mentioned the underlying principle behind your title of the book being sort of the culmination of all of these people in your lineage, because I've said explicitly on this show to people, if you think about it, you are right now at this point in history, you are the result of really centuries of genetic success, right? Like you're the sperm that made it to the egg first and foremost, but your parents were the same, their parents were the same, and so on and so forth. And it's like, for me, I often think about just the fact that I'm not going to squander that, right? It's so funny that that's the principle behind your title and the way you so eloquently described it. But it's so true, bro. And I tell young people, like, man, you've got to realize what led up to the point of your existence, right? Are you really going to throw that all away?
Yeah, the odds of you being here are not awesome. And so there's an old Bible parable. It's called the parable of the talents. And whether you're, regardless of where you're at on a faith journey, it's a great story. So basically, there's a master that has 3 servants. The servants are all given it's called a talent, but it's basically like a coin. Imagine it's like a coin, right? One's given 1 coin, one's given 2, one's given 5. And then they basically say, go out and do something with these. So the one with 5 makes something of it, turns it to 5 more. So they doubled theirs. One with 2, same thing, doubles theirs. The one with 1 buried theirs. You say, why did they bury it? And the reason they buried it is they were fearful that they were going to lose it. And so I think a lot of people are like that, right? We're it's basically fear. Fear screws us up. We don't go for our dreams, don't go for our goals, don't go make stuff happen because we're just like, man, what if I win? What if I lose? What if someone says this? What if someone says that? What if this happens? So the fear. And because of that, we bury the talent. So the master returns. The one with 5, he says, well done. One with 2 that doubled theirs, well done. The one with 1 he says, where's yours? Said, I buried it. And he calls him an unwise and a slothful servant. So let me share this. This is, by the way, this is like the gospel according to me. So this is probably not true. But a couple lessons. Lesson number 1, they all got talents. So in other words, one maybe got 5, one got 2, one got 1, but everyone got something. No one was like, yo, you get 0. So everyone gets gifts, gets talents, gets, this opportunity, right? Second thing is this. Why was it not one of his options to bury the talent? And here's my perspective. Your gifts and talents weren't given to you for you. Your gifts and talents were given to you for the rest of us. And so the way you give glory to the giver of the gifts is to go out and make something of these gifts. Like, go out and do something with your life. Like, make things happen. Make decisions, make commitments. Don't whine, blame, complain, make excuses. Make decisions and commitments. Say, I'm going to make something in my life. Like, I'm going to recognize the gift of like being here and the gift of having even interactions like this. Like those of you listening right now, you get mentorship, through podcasts and through books and through events and different things. Like, you get mentored by people, like in your case, Dave, you're getting mentored by Andy. Like what the heck are we talking about? Like 30 years ago, no one's getting mentored by Andy 30 years ago, because there's no podcast and there's no like way to connect with people like that from across the country, And so it's just a super special thing to say, I'm going to make something of my life because I recognize that the whole thing's a gift. And I recognize that these gifts and talents weren't given to me to hold on to. They're given to me to share with other people. And that's the way you give glory to the giver of the gifts, is by going out and making something of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, man. 100%. And, whether you're a religious person or not, I think that's beside the point. But personally, I do look at it as glorifying God in all that he's given me. And, I would be defiant of him if I didn't use myself as a tool to do good for not only him, not only my family and my community now, but as we said, all those people who came before me, whose existence led up to mine, right? And so I think that there's also an element of just people need that frame. And I think my hope is that someone listening today, for the very first time, they think of it that way, because I think it's very easy, right, to, especially in the world we live in, where we're all so, quote, connected, but also disconnected in many ways from the most human elements that we've grown up to, crave in our lives. That's why I think podcasts are so successful. People crave long form conversation. Right? In this world of instantaneous gratification, it's so easy, especially for young people, man. And I've brought young people up several times because, you mentioned hearing from young teenagers and stuff. And I do think that they need mentorship, and a lot of them don't have fathers in their lives. For example, I was one of those kids, but it's so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of feeling bad for yourself and thinking that you're not enough, and then being exposed to this sort of bombardment of inputs from all these different places that are negative. And I just hope that, and this is why I told you before we started recording, man, I love showcasing stories like your own, because I think those are the stories people need to hear, right? We have, and we've seen it the last 4 years, massive top-down forces that would rather us be fat, weak, stupid, not, in control of our lives, not in control of our own destinies. And we really have to push back against that. I mean, it's our, especially as men, and it's our duty to do that. And I love that you've been that example. I love that you show your family on your social media. I know a lot of guys who are in sort of the public sphere who don't do that, and I can understand it to an extent. You know, my wife doesn't love to be, you know, subjected to my however many followers, and I get that, but I do think it's important that we show that. Like, it's not just grind and hustle and all this stuff. It's protector, provider, right? And I I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that, about being a dad and also balancing that with being a business leader, being a
Yeah.
coach, being someone that really others look up to. Because I think that work-life balance, and this is just my personal opinion, is sort of this mythical thing that we often talk about, but really it's, as Thomas Sowell says, there's no solutions, only compromises. I mean, and I don't know what your perspective is on that, but just juggling being a father of 4, a husband, etc., right?
Yeah, yeah. I want to go back to one thing you just said, just because I want to give a quick piece of advice. Remember, you're talking about the bombardment of all the negative stuff we see. Can I
Yes.
just give a quick piece of advice if you're watching this? Listen, this is what I'd share with you. You want to curate your social media. So what does that mean? It means, my friends, if anything is throwing you off, if anything's giving you bad vibes, if anything's leading you to do stupid crap, like me, you know, like it tempts you to do stuff, you're like, that's probably not the best thing. Unfollow, kind of block, like get rid of that on your feed, and then proactively follow people. Like go proactively follow Dave. Like if my stuff resonates, go proactively follow me. Go proactively follow Andy. Like find people that when they say stuff, you're like, God, fires me up, dude. I love that.
Mhm.
Clarifying for me. Like that keeps me on my path. Find pure, like proactively this, because remember, if you don't proactively do it, the algorithm kind of does it for you.
Yep.
So it starts serving up stuff that's going to get you riled up and serving up stuff that distracts you and so on. So it's just a way to think about social. Like don't, and by the way, it's probably true of everything. Live an intentional life. Live an intentional life. Don't just react to all the distractions. Live a life of intentional creation. You're creating this environment around you. But when it comes to being a father, you know, I had a friend call me once. I've had a ton of friends reach out to me like, will you do like a coaching thing on being a dad, whatever? And I told him, I go, listen, man, I go, it's 3 steps. I go, step 1 is you got to marry Missy. Step 2 is you have amazing kids. And step 3 is don't blow it, you know? So that's my 3 steps to success. But I just am super blessed with an amazing wife. There's no question about that. I'm super blessed with great kids. With that said, let me say this. I think that, you know, there's a role that a mom plays and there's a role that a dad plays. And there's times when mom gives them a hug and there's times when dad says, get your butt down here, you know, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of it's a good yin and yang. There's like this good, you know, balance that a mom and dad play together. And I always want my kids to know, you know, that they love me, that they can come to me. I tell my kids, like, so Dave, one thing I'll say to them, how old are yours again? Remind me.
I just have a 6-year-old and a 4-month-old.
Yeah. So you're still,
yeah.
You're right. They're still little kids. So like, as they start getting older, I said to my kids, I go, look, I said, you're going to see, like, particularly my boys. And I said this to my girls. I go, look, you're going to see pornography, dude. You're going to see inappropriate, you know, when they're super young, you got to explain kind of what, you know, you're going to see inappropriate pictures, whatever. I go, this isn't a matter of if, you will see this stuff. Right. And I said, and I walked through some of the different things that are going to happen. I go, you're going to see this, you're going to see that. I'm not trying to give them like, you know, no matter what you do, you're fine. What I'm more saying is this: you can come to me. Not only you can, I go, I just want you to come to me. Let's talk this stuff out. Just talk it out. I said, the devil works in darkness. You know, God works in light. So in other words, when things are secretive and like, dude, do not tell anyone, and you feel a lot of shame and it's really in the darkness, that's not, you don't want to keep that stuff in the darkness. When you expose it to light, you talk about it, it's on the table, like, let's get this thing out. I said to him, I go, here's the deal. I'll never be mad at you. Just won't be mad. We'll just have an honest conversation and I'm, you know, talk it through with you. And I said, I'm giving you my word. I'm not going to be mad at you, you know? And so like my son, he's almost 20. I'll say to him as he was a kid, 13, 14, 15, we could just check in and be like, hey bud, how you doing with this? How you doing with that? And he's like, you know, dad, I saw this, saw that. Cool. All right. How are you feeling? How are you doing here? And so we could just keep these little guardrails where we could just kind of tap it back into where he needed to be. And this kid's just a world-class kid. So just stuff like that, like being kind of present in their life and just talking about some of the issues they're going to come up against. The stuff's it's bombarded, around these kids' lives. The other thing I would share is like, it's like helping these kids to do what they say they're going to do, that their word matters. So if my kids say, I ask them to go take out the garbage cans, right? And they don't do it, that really would tick me off. Like, in other words, you got to keep your word. So it's the bigger principle. It's like the higher principle. It's not about the garbage cans for me. It's about the principle of like keeping your word. And then the other one for me would be, one of the lessons I think my dad did a great job of teaching me was that the world doesn't owe you anything. So it was like to rid yourself of all entitlement. So one of the things I teach Dave is imagine there's like a pulley system. So as you rid yourself of all entitlement, you pull up. So one comes down, one comes up. As you rid yourself of all entitlement, you raise your personal responsibility and you start to own your decisions. And, you live a life with zero entitlement, that the world doesn't know anything. The government doesn't know anything. Your parents don't know anything. Like you start to say, I'm going to take responsibility for my life. So if I do something wrong, I tell my kids, listen, if you do something wrong, we can work through that. If you lie about doing something wrong, that's when you start blaming someone else, or just own your stuff, and get your house in order. So I think some of those bigger leadership principles and maybe even bigger life principles, I think those have helped me to pour in to these kids. And then one other quick thing I'll share with you. Check this out. I thought this was so interesting. I was listening to this podcast the other day, and there was a marriage expert. This husband and wife are marriage experts. And they said that they can listen and watch a couple for 15 minutes. And with a 94% accuracy, they can tell you if that couple's going to stay together. Wow. And you go, what? How's that even possible? Here's what they look for. It's what they call a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative. So those of you that are married or in a relationship, think about this. How many positive things? Hey, babe, I love you. Thank you so much. You look beautiful today. I'm so grateful for you. You're saying positives versus negatives and like undercuts, right? Same with your kids. We can get into a pattern sometimes with our kids where it's like, dude, do your hair. And by the way, tie your shoes. And your bed's not even made and you're late for school. I mean, here you are, 4 negatives in a row, right?
Right.
You want to always recognize what you want to see more of. So you're looking for the positive so you can recognize and acknowledge the positive, because you want to recognize what you want to see more of. We all love that recognition. We all do. It's a human thing, right? Where you're like, thanks, Dad. My dad, acknowledge this or acknowledge that. So recognize what you want to see more of. Look for the positive that they're doing and reinforce that. Again, I'm not saying you can't ever tighten up the things that aren't positive. The negatives, you can address those. But a 5-to-1 ratio, by the way, 5-to-1, Dave, was to maintain the relationship. So you want to be higher than 5-to-1 if you want to really grow and nurture and blossom that relationship. But 5-to-1 is to maintain it. And I think of a lot of us, we're listening, we're like, oh, yikes. I'm kind of negative with my spouse, or I'm kind of negative with my kids. I'm always on them. You want to look for some positive things as well.
Yeah, I think at least one thing that I don't want to say struggled with, but it's certainly something I've had to be cognizant of as my daughter has gotten older. And she's this little gymnastics beast. Like, she's incredibly talented, very driven, very self-critical, just intrinsically.
Yeah.
The kid it's ridiculous. And, I see a lot of me in her. And so naturally, if I'm not careful, if I don't check myself, I'll start to sort of impose expectations on her that I would just have for myself. And I forget, hey, this is a 6-year-old kid. Right. And so what I've found is even the things I might want to be critical of with her, which, I'm not saying I'm yelling at her like, hey, you didn't get that backflip, nothing like that. But just, I try to give positive feedback and offer criticisms, etc. But what I find, to your point, is when I do make sure that and I'd be interested to know, I'd imagine it's probably in that 5-to-1 range when you really flesh the numbers out. But when I give her a lot of positive reinforcement, when I'm at her practices, which, by the way, I get to do because just like your dad, I sort of am in control of my destiny, and I'm at all our practices and everything, which is amazing. I highly recommend it for everyone out there. If she looks over at me and I'm smiling, I give her a thumbs up when she does something good. And after practice, I tell her, hey, you did amazing at this. You're crushing it at that. What I find is the things that I would have criticisms of, sort of naturally take care of themselves because the positive reinforcement I'm providing her gives her that fuel to overcome the things that I could have very well chosen, right, to be negative about, but I didn't.
Your daughter's a winner, right? She's being raised by winner parents. She's a winner. So she's going to auto correct those things that aren't helping her win, right? Because she's a winner, and you're building that winner identity. That goes back to, I'm the one. Success is an identity process. So a winner, if you think you're a winner, if you see yourself and identify, I'm a winner, then you don't roll over and quit like a loser does. If you think you're a loser, you won't pay the price and do what a winner will do. My wife teaches drill, or my two daughters are 14 and 16. They're on the drill team. And so there's different moves in drill. There's like an aerial and these different moves, like splits and these different moves. And you're only as good. This is a philosophy from the Navy SEALs, but it's so good in sports. It's so good in our businesses, my friends. It's so good in our teams. You're only as strong as the weakest link, right? So in the Navy SEALs, they're only strong as the weakest guy. In drill, you're literally only as strong as that weakest link, because everyone can't do a dance where everyone does an aerial if two of the girls can't do aerials, because it just doesn't work, right? You have to like think of other ways to highlight the kids, Here's the point is, I tell my girls, I said, I love this about my two girls. They're total winners. They go, Dad, if I couldn't do an aerial and everyone was like, in other words, if I was the weak link, they're like, I would work and they do tirelessly to not be the weak link anymore. You don't want to be the weak link. You know what I'm saying? And where some kids are just kind of not wired that way. They're just kind of like, whatever, dude. Listen, your daughter she's a winner. So she's going to auto correct that stuff and improve where she needs to improve, because she doesn't want to be the weak link.
Exactly. And what I learned as her dad is all I have to do is give positive reinforcement on the W's, and then the L's sort of fade away and they get replaced by W's, because that works for her, right? But it would be very easy, I think, as people like us who I would imagine you're very self-critical, you hold yourself to a certain standard and you move about the world in that way. It's easy to impose that on others. And I actually struggled with this a little bit in my business early on, because I would expect my employees to care as much as I did, right? And to be like me. And I was young and dumb and in my 20s and trying to build this thing, and I found very quickly that that was a losing way to go about business. You have to recognize in each individual where their strengths are and bolster those, right? And same in my marriage, same with my kids. Well, I've got a brand new one, so it will be that way with her.
Awesome. But those are great days,
dude. It's so much fun. But I want to hit on marriage real quick. I know you got a pretty hard stop, but in the last few minutes here, you mentioned providing the 5-to-1 ratio, at least, preferably a higher number to 1, in terms of positive versus negative. And I'm huge on that, especially in front of my kids, showing my wife love, showing my daughter what a loving relationship looks like. I make it a point to flirt with my wife, maybe not in front of the kid, but we go on dates, we schedule date nights, all these things. And we've been together 18 years and we still do this stuff. And this is my advice I give to young dudes all the time, especially early in marriage. What sort of tips can you give from your perspective as a married man to maybe someone who's about to get married or considering it, or early in their marriage? What's made it work for you, aside from what you've already said?
Yeah. I mean, look, who you marry is the most important decision you'll ever make in your life. You don't want to blow that one. You want to get that one right.
Yep.
And the best way to get that right is make sure you got you right? Like you're in the right spot yourself. Once you're married, listen, it's like, there's no 50-50, 70-30. This is 100-100. Like you're just all in on this deal. And her, in this case, your wife, her well-being is paramount to you. Like her, you making sure that she's doing well is paramount. And, there's a principle I teach called Find Your Five. And the concept is this: it's like the 80-20 principle. So 80% of what you do only produces 20% of the results, or 20% of what you do of your actions produce 80% of the results.
Right.
Remember when I figured out how to leverage that, I was like, man, if 20% produces 80, then 10% would produce 90 and 5% would produce 95. I was like, what's the 5? And so, here's a couple examples of if you had to limit down to 5 things that if you did these 5 and you did them well, you probably would knock out most of the other stuff. In other words, the satellite things would all kind of get into orbit. One would be a weekly date night. And, like Dave, in your case, you got this little baby, it's, gets harder, but guys, you can go for like a date night can be as simple as just that time where you go for a walk or you go watch a movie together, but you spend really intentional time. Number 2 would be daily communication. And there's a lot of couples, and I'm talking more than, hey, babe, can you pick up the kids, or what's the schedule? What's for dinner? Not that stuff. I'm talking like, how are you doing? And like really communicate. So weekly date night, daily communication, emotional and physical connection. So let me share this. You can be on the same couch and be not emotionally connected. You can be 2,000 miles away on business, and you can be completely emotionally connected. In other words, you're aligned emotionally, like you've communicated and you're aligned. And then physical connection. Make sure you're holding hands. Make sure you're giving each other a hug. Make sure you're physically intimate. Like find those physical connections. So you have emotional and physical connection, weekly date night, communication. Next one for me would be giving compliments, like finding sincere things. This goes back to that kind of 5-to-1 concept. Can you find some sincere things to say, hey, babe, you look beautiful today. Thank you so much. You don't take stuff for granted. Like the kitchen looks amazing. Thank you so much. Or thanks for picking up the kids. Or I just want you to know how much I appreciate your support. I know we're grinding. I know we're, fighting to make all this stuff happen. I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. And then, for those of you that kind of have a spiritual connection, maybe it's like a daily prayer, there's times you're praying together, that kind of stuff. You're asking for maybe higher power. My point is, if you were to do just those 5 things, I mean, listen, the odds of that panning out over time are pretty freaking high. You're looking for ways to serve. You're looking for daily ways to give, daily communication and good vibes. You're communicating well. You have emotional and physical connection. You're dating your spouse. Over time, that probably is going to go pretty well. We're just past 21 years, my wife and I, and man, it's not an easy ride for anybody, but at the same time, there's some things you can do that make that the most cherished relationship you have in your whole life. Like my wife and I, that is my most cherished relationship by far. Like the loyalty, that commitment is just something that's so special and so rare, and you won't get any other place. You won't find it in business. You won't find it in friendships. It's just this really unique situation. If you can go harness and cultivate that within a marriage.
Yeah, man, I could not agree more. And when you're starting to talk the time scales we've been with our spouses, they really do shape you into who you become as well. I mean, you guys truly built your life together, and that's just a beautiful thing, man. All right, brother, I know you've got a hard stop, so I don't want to be disrespectful of your time. I really appreciate you sitting down and talking to me today. Where can people find you? Where can they pick up the book? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can go to iamjustinprince.com. I'm across all social media platforms. I am Justin Prince or Justin Prince. You can go to Amazon and wherever your favorite books are sold for the book. And it's a book that will change your life. I'm just telling you, my friends, this is a book will change your life. Go to Audible for those of you that are, listeners. This is one of those books you'll look back and be like, man, I remember where I was when I read that, because it's each chapter stacks on the last chapter to where when you're done, you're like, I got this. It's a roadmap to create and design and live an unforgettable life.
I love it. I love practical, implementable advice. And it sounds like that's exactly what it is. I'm excited to pick it up and read it. All right, brother. Thank you so much. Everybody listening, I appreciate you. I love you. Keep working hard and keep your minds free.